This is my kitchen table and also my filing system. Over much of the past 3 decades, I've been an investor. The highest calling of mankind, I've often thought, was private equity. And then I started interviewing.
While I watch your interviews, I know how to do some interviewing.
I've learned in doing my interviews how leaders make it to the top.
I asked him how much he wanted. He said $250. I said fine. I didn't negotiate with him, and I did no due diligence.
I have something I'd like to sell, and how they stay there. You don't feel inadequate now because being only the second wealthiest man in the world, is that right? Josh Harris is a major figure in the investment world and the sports world. In the investment world, he was the co-founder of Apollo, one of the largest private credit and private equity firms in the world. As a sports owner, he recently bought the Washington Commanders for $6 billion, largest price ever paid for a major sports franchise in the United States. I had a chance to sit down with Josh Harris recently to talk about his combined life as an investor and sports team owner. Josh, for those who don't know, was a co-founder of Apollo, which is one of the largest private equity and private credit firms in the world. He is now the founder and managing director and CEO of a new firm based in Miami, 26 North. And as if that wasn't not enough, you're also the lead partner in the Washington Commanders.
Yep.
You're also the lead partner, managing director for the NBA Philadelphia 76ers. You're the co-managing partner for the New Jersey Devils in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
And you're one of the managing partners for the Crystal Palace English Premier Soccer team. And is that all? Anything today? You bought anything else today?
Married with 5 kids.
Okay. And which is harder? 5 kids being married or all the other things?
It's all very rewarding.
Okay, so let's talk about your new firm, 26 North. Where did you get that name from?
So it's a funny story. I hired a branding agency and spent a lot of money, and then they came up with 5 horrible names, and I threw all those in the trash and named it myself. So when I left Apollo, I wasn't necessarily going to start another alternatives firm, but I realized that the big firms have built, Carlyle amongst them, Apollo, Blackstone, KKR, TPG, have built these incredible investing ecosystems, but many of them had gotten so big and become public companies, and they were sort of the beta of alts. They're so big that they need to, get into very big areas, pools of capital, and what had been left a little bit behind was alpha, really being the alpha of alts. And, and so we decided that we could bring, I decided that I could create a firm that had big firm capabilities, that had all the trappings of a big firm. In our case, it's an integrated platform with debt and insurance, and it's an alpha creation team led by someone who left McKinsey. Incredible talent, and apply it against the middle market and the upper middle market, and do it with a lot more alignment where I'm the largest investor, and everyone who's joining is not necessarily getting paid as much cash, but they're really going to benefit if the investors benefit.
How much money have you raised and put into the firm so far?
It's gone really well. We're at $23 billion after 24 months, and which is beyond my wildest expectation. We have 125 people, and it's an amazing culture, amazing people. People have really jumped on the bandwagon, and now I'm hard at work trying to create alpha. So in sports, you have to create memories and win for the city. And in alternatives investing, as you know, it's about returns. It's about alpha for retirees and pensioners. So I think that's what we're doing.
To raise that kind of money, you had to go out and, I guess, ask people for money. So how did you do that with all the sports teams?
I spent a lot of time flying around. I mean, literally, I have a mobile office. It's a plane.
So you've already announced 2 deals, one just recently and one about a week or so ago.
Yeah.
What was so attractive about those deals?
Private equity is going through a bit of a transition where multiple values have peaked and they're on their way down. And so some of the returns haven't been as good. And so we're benefiting from that. And so to a certain extent, we're buying really good businesses at much better pricing than others have in the past. So we're able to buy really good businesses, one in the fitness area and one creates electrical systems for data centers and stadiums, and we're buying them at 7 times. So unlike the 60 times cash flow, we're paying 7 times cash flow. And that might compare to the industry that's paying 10 or 11 times cash flow. So our strategy is to buy good businesses and kind of find those opportunities that are misvalued for some reason or another.
So as you make investments now, are you worried about geopolitical events around the world, what's going on in Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, or you don't pay that much attention to that?
Yeah, look, you have to pay attention to that. I mean, obviously, right now we have a market at all-time highs, and we have an economy that is cranking. Inflation, the Federal Reserve has done a good job of finding that, they call it Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold. Inflation's coming down, but unemployment's low. And so things are pretty good, and pricing is aggressive for the most part. The markets are at all-time peak. PE multiples are very close. So you got to be cognizant that a geopolitical event can knock everything on its side. And so you have to just be careful, right? And you have to plan, okay, what happens if oil prices spike, right? That could be an outcome, for example.
So as we talk, we're getting close to the next presidential election.
Yes, we are.
So
Heard about that.
Do you think it will make a difference to your investment approach if one party wins versus another party, or one party controls the Congress versus somebody controlling the White House? How do you look at the election impacting your business?
The way we look at it, that is, first of all, it's like a 50-50 election. I mean, you can go look at some betting sites, and it's a real toss-up, so it's really hard to predict. I think we have to be ready for every environment. Certainly, there are different strengths and weaknesses. If you have a candidate that is more regulatory-oriented, that might affect certain industries like energy or healthcare differently. The antitrust policy could be different. That could affect acquisitions. So you have to think about all that and just be prepared for it. I think that if there's no clear outcome, could create some volatility. That may be a buying opportunity. So I think we think about all of it, and we plan for all of it, but then we get ready to pivot one way or another, and we make sure the stuff we're doing now is very robust, that it maybe has less leverage, that it's more sustainable under any scenario that could come out.
So do you get involved in the campaign? You're not a donor, you're not a supporter, you just stay out of it?
If you get involved with politics, in many cases I have fans that are on both sides of the aisle, right? So it becomes controversial, and sports are supposed to bring people together. And so I keep my opinions to myself, really. I stay out of politics, and I don't get involved, even though, I mean, obviously, I care about the world, but it's like my ability to create impact is through these platforms, and so that sort of keeps me out of politics.
Let's go back to your youth. You were born in this area, and you grew up in Bethesda?
Grew up in Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase, Bethesda, Chevy Chase area, which is, for those who don't know.
Close to Bethesda.
It's close, okay. So you went to high school, and then you went to here, and then you went to Penn.
Right.
And while you said you weren't, a great academic or something, you graduated summa cum laude, so you must have been pretty good.
Yes, I got better as I went along. So my dad had gone to Penn, and also I was a wrestler, and they had a wrestling team, and so I started talking to the coach, and so I kind of got into Penn, even though I probably was an aspirational candidate for Penn. That was my highest shot.
But did you wrestle at Penn?
I did.
Then what did you do right after graduation?
So I went to Drexel, which was a storied investment bank. That was Michael Milken, and Drexel was, I always, like in my career, I always went to aspirationally what I felt was where I could get the best experience with the smartest people. So I was there 1986 to 1988. It was killing it. And then I applied to one business school, Harvard, and I said, look, if I am blessed to get into Harvard, I read the book, like, what you don't learn in Harvard Business School, and I was like, if I can get into this place, I'll go, and I went.
And then what did you do?
So then it's interesting, I felt that private equity I wanted to be involved with companies versus just being at a bank. And private equity seemed like the way to get the most responsibility, and it was where all the smartest people were going. And I joined this 5-year-old young firm called Blackstone. I went there, and 3 months into it, Drexel went out of business, and I got a call from Mark Rowan, who had been the star associate at Drexel, who I had worked with, and he said, look, we're starting up this firm. And initially I was like, I'm good. You guys just went out of business. But I decided to follow him and Leon Black, and I joined Apollo, which had 12 people at that point.
All right, so you helped to start that firm. You're one of the co-founders, and you were there for how many years before you left?
32 years.
Okay, and you were the head of private equity?
Yeah, so I started off, I mean, literally, there was only 12 people, so we all were just doing...
But at the end, you were leading the private equity effort?
So I was leading private equity, and then I was running the firm. So the firm went public. What happens in the investing business is you get kicked upstairs. And so ultimately, it became the three of us formed an executive committee, and we were running the firm, and I was running the firm day to day.
So when you joined the firm, how many people did Apollo have?
12.
And now it has a market cap of $80 billion?
Yeah, $70 to $80 billion, depending on the day. So it's I'm very proud of it. I mean, I'm still a very large shareholder, and it was a great thing to have created, and now to be able to have a second act, which is 26 North, but also with sports, with the Commanders, and I sort of think what I do here in Washington is a very big deal. Even though Apollo has been a very big deal, so this is, really important to my legacy.
When you bought the Washington Commanders, people were aghast at the price you paid. It was $6 billion. No team in the United States had ever been sold for that. I'm not sure any team in the world had ever been sold for $6 billion. Were you shocked at the price that you had to pay? And did you have any second thoughts about it? Or now that other teams seem to be valued at even higher than that, as they sell off pieces to private equity firms, do you think you got a bargain?
Yeah, so at the time, I would have preferred to pay less. And so I joked that my credentials as a value investor were shattered. We paid the highest price in the history of the world for a sports team, but that was quickly surpassed. But I had a long-run vision that the NFL was a dominant sport in the world, that it would, the media rights would continue to appreciate as global audiences flooded in. I felt that there would be upward pressure on values. I also, was aware that the NFL was considering letting in private equity, alternative forms of capital, and so for all those reasons, I felt that people would look back on it and say it was a good deal, and it's proven as such. I mean, obviously, you mentioned that the current values, a couple rumors out there that numbers starting with an $8 billion. Will be invested for teams, and I think those are true rumors.
So the team you inherited wasn't doing that well, I think it's fair to say. The team is now 4-1.
4-1, let's go.
And you have a star quarterback. You drafted the Heisman Trophy winner for last year. He's done extremely well. So what's the greatest thrill? Buying a team in your own hometown, being there to cheer the players on? Do you go into the locker rooms and tell them, win one for the Gipper or something like that?
Yeah, you try to avoid. They've heard every speech, but look, I think for me personally, the elation that you feel. I mean, obviously, it's I've been very blessed to be involved with a lot of successes in the business world, but the elation you feel being part of a crowd when the team wins, being amongst the fans, that's really something special, and it's a shared experience. It's a community. And it's amazing to be involved with. So I'd say of all the things, look, obviously owning a team in your hometown is incredible.
When you started buying these teams, you started buying the 76ers first.
Yep.
And you paid a price that seemed reasonably high for people at that time.
$280 million.
$280 million, wow. Okay, $280 million. Today, these NBA franchises are $4 or $5 billion or more.
Right.
So, what did people say to you when you were at Apollo, you're running the private equity business, and you say, by the way, guys, I'm going to go buy a basketball team? Did your partners say, why are you doing that? And did your investors say you shouldn't be doing that?
My partners at Apollo were sort of like, just don't let this interfere with your day job. They were very supportive of it at that time. Our investors, I think initially they scratched their head, but what happened was they realized that it wasn't interfering with my day job. How focused I was. Apollo continued to flourish. And they realized that there's a synergy. Like, you learn a lot about life in sports. You learn a lot about being a steward and culture and people. And so over time, as I went on this journey, everyone was supportive.
Okay, well, I thought you made a commitment at the time that you would attend every home game or every game, so how did you manage to do that?
Yeah, so there are 82 basketball games. I never made it. I certainly, when you own, first of all, I've never missed a football game, so since I've owned the team. So I'll keep going, home or away. There's less of those, but no, look, I think if you are the managing partner of a team, and really for me, it's these two teams, because I have partners that handle the other teams, and I'm more of an investor. I'd say that you have to be present. You're accountable to the city. People want to see you there. The players notice, if you're there, and people want to make sure that you're aware, you're present, you're watching. They don't want you to be overly involved, or at least I don't think you should be. And so you got to be at a lot of games. And for me, some people play golf, some people play tennis. I work and I go to sports and I hang out with my family.
So now you have a football team, a basketball team, a hockey team, a soccer team. Are you done, or are you thinking about a baseball team or something else?
I'm pretty good right now. I'm focused on
Okay.
winning in Washington and winning in Philly and support, in basketball, winning in Washington football, and then letting my partners in London and in Newark, David Blitzer and Stephen Parrish, win in New Jersey and London. I go to two or three. I do go to a few football matches, European football matches. I love it, but mostly watching on TV, and then go to as many hockey games as I can. But right now I got my focus on these two teams and my business and my family.
When you own a sports team, and let's suppose the team isn't going to win that game, can't win every game, and do you think you can leave early, or as the owner, people are watching you? I always wonder, can you leave early, or you have to wait till the bitter end?
I don't think you can leave early unless I think you have to stay there. And look, I think win or lose, you're part of the fabric of the team, right? And you're there with the players. And I mean, listen, if you really have to leave early, but I'm saying as a rule, you're there, right? You're there, win or lose. You're not going to win every game. And so, like, if you leave, right, then what's the message in that, right? So I think you're there till the end, and you're there after the game, with them, and then you leave, once, win or lose. It's a lot funner when you win, believe me. I mean, you go on Instagram, you watch the Commanders locker room, they have some of it when we win. I mean, it's insane how excited everyone is. And when they lose, people aren't very happy. So I think that, but you just have to be there as part of that fabric. And by the way, everyone does it differently. That's the way I do it.
And the Washington Commanders have been playing in a stadium that was built by two previous owners 2 times ago.
Yeah, it's
I guess it was under Jack Kent Cooke.
Yep.
So are you going to have a new stadium sometime soon, and where you want to put it?
Yeah, so we're committed to doing that. I mean, obviously, we just put $80 million in the old stadium because it really needed some work, and it needs more work, and we're fixing things as fast as we can. But at the end of the day, a modern stadium and where the premium is situated and how the Wi-Fi is set up and where the field is relative to the seats and a lot of different things, you can only go so far with an older stadium. So we'd like to build a new stadium. Obviously, you need support of whatever jurisdiction you build it in. The first part of that is a community dialogue, and we're having those dialogues in DC. We're having those dialogues in Maryland, and where we play. And so we're focused on building a new stadium. We're in the first part of those dialogues, and we've got to get the communities and the politicians rallied behind us. And in the case of DC, right, the most likely thing is RFK, obviously, where we all grew up going to football games. And that is currently owned by the federal government, or is controlled by the federal government. So we got to get that back to DC, and then DC can decide what it wants to do. But that right now is what we're working on. I treated my choices as an investment. Really take a step back. However you do it, write down the pluses and the minuses. Think about it as risk, return, and investment, and make wise choices.
So how do you compare the thrill of making a great investment at, say, at Apollo or now at your new firm, 26 North, with winning a sports event or winning a championship?
I used to feel a great sense of pride when I would exit an investment. I mean, I would sit there and I would think about it, and I would think about what had happened and lives that have been changed, and I would have a glow, right? But the euphoria of a big win, just the absolute high emotional state you get into, the immediacy of that is amazing.
So the private equity world has a lot of big names and big egos, and the sports world has a lot of big names and big egos. Where are the egos bigger, in sports or in private equity?
I would say that they're big in both places, but in terms of, look, I think sports is more public, right? The public gets to know the people bigger. I think private equity is, it's more under wraps, if you will.
So like when you're in a restaurant in Washington,
yes,
or Philadelphia, does anybody ever come up to you and say, you did a great deal at Apollo, congratulations? Or they
No.
say, that you ought to play this player or draft this player. Would you get more of that when you're about the sports than the private equity?
Well, this is an incredible thing. So LyondellBasell has, thousands of employees, probably 15, 20,000 employees. We had companies that had 67. I think we used to say we had, 280,000 employees across our portfolio, and then we had millions of beneficiaries. And so what you're doing, you're touching a lot of lives as an investor, as an entrepreneur, building these firms. But on the other hand, no one cares about the price of polypropylene. No one cares, and everyone cares about the starting lineup of the Washington Commanders or the Sixers, and you can't, now people come up to me all the time, and it's not about alternatives, right? It's about sports. And so the impact on the public at large in terms of the psyche and the feeling in the city is so different.
Right. Suppose somebody's watching this and say, I want to be like Josh Harris. I want to own sports teams, be a financial success. What is the key to success? Is it wrestling as a young person, or what is it that makes somebody into you? What advice would you give to your own children or other people who want to be like you?
Yeah, I think that it's about excellence. And so being whatever you do, you have to enjoy it. And I think it's about being all in. I think it's go big or go home. It's like an all-in mentality where, like I said, you're only on earth for a little bit. So, throw it on. I tell my kids that, unfortunately, ages 16 to 30, right? Those are your fun, I look back on those, and even though, obviously I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful for my life, the maximum fun you have is in those years. Those are really fun times. But on the other hand, you're building your own narrative. You're building, your story, right? And so you got to bring it. It's got to be work hard and play hard. And so, yeah, there'll be times where you have to stay up and you can't go out with your friends, and you've got to get the A's. And so I think it's about excellence. It's about doing things you like. And then I think it's about making smart decisions. And I look at every decision I've made. When I decided to leave Blackstone to go to Apollo, that was a risk, right? And I felt that I weighed it like an investment. I treated my choices as an investment. I think who you marry is a critical decision. So, obviously that's maybe the most important decision of your life. So these big decisions, really take a step back. However you do it, write down the pluses and the minuses. Think about it as risk, return, and investment, and make wise choices.
And you think that you'll win a Super Bowl next year or this year? Or how long before?
No proclamations. All I can say is that I am going to put my all into making this an elite team, and we're going to create a lot of shots at winning a Super Bowl, and we're going to do our best.
So if you get a call from Joe Embiid, your star player,
yes,
and you get a simultaneous call from one of your children, which call do you take first?
I'll pick up my son really quick.